Good morning. While Tracy's checking everybody in, I'll just go ahead and get some brief introductions. I like the spotlight, so I'm going to stand in front of the screen.
This is episode 195 of Bourbon Pursuit. I'm one of your hosts, Kenny Coleman, and let's go through just a little bit of our news, if you will, because I want to make sure that you are getting your travel booked and your tickets bought for Bourbon and Beyond 2019. It's going to be taking place September 22nd and 23rd. The headliners have been announced. The acts have been announced. You've got people such as myself and Ryan and Fred and Blake from Bourbonaire and Brian from Sippin' Corn. We're all going to be there. Oh, and Jordan from Drinking Bourbon. We're all going to be there. We all have sessions on the stages at the Bourbon tents. We want to see you there. So go and get your information and tickets about the festival at bourbonandbeyond.com. For all our supporters out there on Patreon, we have to say thank you. And for people that are on the edge about it, guess what? We've got some new reward levels available. We have some that are just our thank yous at $1 a month, and we have them all the way up to $250 a month. That gets you bottles of Pursuit series. You get your opportunity to be on the podcast. You also get a 1-year subscription to Bourbon Plus magazine. Tons of stuff. I want you to go and check it out. Patreon.com/Bourbon Pursuit, because we wanted to revamp this to bring newer and fresher rewards. And it's also a reminder to say thank you for everybody that is supporting us, because it is that community that funds this podcast to keep it going. So again, huge thank you to you out there. And episodes 6, 7, 8, and 9 from Pursuit series are now available. You can check out our revamped website that makes it a little bit easier navigation and quicker buy now buttons over at pursuitspirits.com. You've probably heard us talk about Westport Whiskey and Wine on the podcast before. We recommend it highly as one of those retailers for folks to visit when they're coming to Louisville when they're seeing the Bourbon Trail. They have a very large tasting bar and plenty of private barrel selections available. And those private picks is kind of what put Chris Zaborowski on the map. This session that we're going to talk about, or that you're going to be hearing from today, was recorded at the Higher Proof Expo during the 2018 Kentucky Bourbon Affair. The 2019 Kentucky Bourbon Affair will be taking place June 4th through the 8th. It's 5 days, 19 distilleries, and 45 total events. Tickets for the 2019 Bourbon Affair are currently on sale, and you can find out more information at kybourbonaffair.com. We've got Fred Minnick with Above the Char.
I'm Fred Minnick, and this is Above the Char. The Kentucky Derby is coming up, and if you live in Kentucky, you know it well, because we've been celebrating it really since last year. And the fact is, the Kentucky Derby is a part of our culture. It's who we are. It next to bourbon, it's probably the most important asset that we have to this great state. And frankly, the horses also add like an element of beauty to the Commonwealth. We also get a lot of phone calls for tickets and emails wanting to know where the special parties are. That's always a lot of fun to tell people like, hey, there are plenty of tickets available. $5,000 a pop if you want to sit here, $500 if you want to sit there. Yeah, it's expensive, the Kentucky Derby is. But it's a once-in-a-lifetime event. And if you've never been, you have to find a way to come out to Kentucky and enjoy the best 2 minutes in all of sports. With that said, if you cannot attend, you can still enjoy it at home. I dare say your local market will probably have a Kentucky Derby party. And if you don't have a Kentucky Derby party already in existence, then create one. In the latest issue of Bourbon Plus magazine, Peggy No Stevens talks about how to throw a Kentucky Derby party. And if you are looking to find ways to bet, there's no need to bring in an outside bookie. All you have to do is download the Twin Spires app, and you can bet on the horses as they're getting in the gates or even while they're in the paddock. You can bet days in advance. And I'm telling you, betting on horse racing, especially the Derby, while you have bourbon in your hand, there is just something romantic about it. It's a connection to who we were in the past and a little bit of who we are now and where we're going. So some hints on your betting. I like to focus on the speed. Like there's a line in the program where it talks about the speed. Always pick the fastest horses in the last turn. Those are the horses that can always give you a shot of winning. And so what I like to do is I also like to compare the speed to the odds. So if I see I have a fast horse with 20-1 odds, I pick him to win, place, and show. And about 35% of the time, I get in the money on that. Now, you may say like, well, you're still losing. It's horse racing. You got very low odds. So 35% is not a bad percentage in horse racing. So I hope you bet on the Kentucky Derby and have a good time. If you are coming to Kentucky, hit us up on Instagram or Facebook. You can find me at Fred Minnick. That's at Fred Minnick. Until next week, cheers.
Play Whiskey Wednesday, Round 11, the memory game. Until June 26, each week you can win one of our 12 incredible grand prizes. Select $2 at checkout. And if they match on drawing night, you'll win that bottle. Not a match? No worries. You still score a Weller 12-year. Every $5 ticket gives you 5 chances to win, including 4 weekly bonus prizes. Get your tickets now at give270.org. Charitable Gaming License ORG 0002703.
Always find what you love at Total Wine & More. With so many great bottles to choose from at the lowest price, it's easy to find your favorite Cabernet or a new single-barrel bourbon to try with some help from one of their friendly guides. And with every bottle comes the confidence of knowing you just found something amazing. With the lowest prices for over 30 years, find what you love and love what you find only at Total Wine & More. Curbside pickup and delivery available in most areas. Visit TotalWine.com to learn more. Spirits not sold in Virginia and North Carolina. Drink responsibly and be 21. Ed Bly and Rising Tide Spirits are back again with a new release of Old Stubborn Bourbon. And this release of Old Stubborn is a premium hand marriage of 10, 11, and 12-year cask strength, barely filtered pot still bourbon. It comes in at a staggering 123.8 proof. And the flavoring grain for this one, which the last one was wheated, but this time it's now rye. Rich, sweet, and bold with a long finish that's sure to be another eye-opener. You can order online at Sealbox or thebourbonconcierge.com, and you can even purchase in person at Revival Vintage Spirits, and even now with very few select stores in Kentucky. You can get it now while you can, but be sure to do it because it's not going to last long. From their bar to yours, Chad and Sarah of the popular YouTube channel It's Bourbon Night bring you their favorite at-home old-fashioned mix with the new Elemental Elixirs Golden Hour Syrup. It's a custom-made syrup with notes of bold black tea, warm spices, and orange zest. All you need is your favorite whiskey and ice. No bitters needed. One bottle makes 16 drinks, so that's only $1 a cocktail before you add your own whiskey. They can also be enjoyed in other cocktails or spirits, mocktails, coffee, tea, and anything you can think of. It's crafted locally in Lexington, Kentucky, and you can get your bottle now at whiskeyambitions.com. Do you ever pour yourself a bourbon, swirl it around, and then start struggling to come up with tasting notes? And perhaps you're also looking for a good Father's Day gift idea. Well, you can now solve both with a kit from Knows Your Bourbon. And unlike other nosing kits on the market, Knows Your Bourbon kits feature real ingredients for the most authentic aromas. You can smell real Tahitian vanilla bean instead of some synthetic aroma that's just made from chemicals. So head on over to knowsyourbourbon.com and enter code BP10 for 10% off your order.
My name's Chris Zaborowski. I'm owner of Westport Whiskey and Wine here in Louisville, Kentucky. Been doing this for a little while, 10 years for the store, but I've been in the beverage alcohol business for well over 30 years of my adult life. I was one of the first wine educators here in the community, and also was helpful with founding the original member of the Stave and Thief Society, and helped write the curriculum on developing certified bourbon stewards. So that's sort of one of the reasons that brings me to this. Most important criteria for all this, why I do it, like you, I like to drink. I like good whiskey. I like to experience it. I like to share a lot of those situations. So we're going to talk a little bit about today, before we get into delve into the tasting, cover some key characters. What's all the fuss about single barrel whiskeys? Well, obviously, or just bourbon in general, is return to that idea that life, the quality of the spirits that are produced in Kentucky, we've all known about it for a long time, and the world's just now finding out about it. creates its own challenges in its own right. And we'll talk specifically about doing barrel selections and what the things that you will need to know. All right, so whiskey supplies are very limited, as we all know, and that's really frustrating for a lot of us. I'm sure it's frustrating for you as a consumer, like going, and I'm really impressed that you're all here and not standing in line at some of the other release parties that are going on this morning around town. So thank you all for doing that as well. I mean, because it's a challenge for all of us to find the stuff we get. It's gone from us, for example, our barrel allocations. Last year, we did, I think, well over a dozen barrels of Four Roses for last year, and we were only allocated 3 for this year, for example. That's how tight the whiskey business is becoming. Demand for bourbon is everywhere. You know, good, bad, or indifferent, our suppliers are trying to send more whiskey across, around the world to other countries, as well as, around the States, and that dwindles the amount of good whiskey that's available for us here and the opportunity to get something. We started doing a long time ago the single barrel program because we thought there was a real opportunity to talk about something unique. A lot of the people market their brands saying, we have a taste. We want you to taste this way. We want it to always be consistent. So what we decided to do was to go after the single barrel aspect of this, is find those sweet barrels. My first experience with doing that was back in 1998. I had the opportunity to go with Jimmy Russell and Eddie Russell through the old Wild Turkey distillery. And that was the year that Russell's Reserve was created. Russell's Reserve came about from that little bit of the sweet barrel story, where Jimmy and Eddie would always go and know where in the warehouse they could pull a really good barrel of whiskey. Now, Jimmy was humbled at the time because he didn't want it to be named after him. But at the marketing at the time, the parent owners at that time, Austin Nichols, said, well, we're going to brand this whiskey and name it after you. Since you're picking and finding all these little sweet barrels, we're going to do that. So that was the first time it resonated with me that there's some distinction going on to find a really good barrel of whiskey within situations. Of course, we've been on the Buffalo Trace Tour. Most of you all, if you've been on that, you've heard the story about how Blanton's, one of the Blanton's brands was created. Elmer T. Lee would go pick single barrels of, Blanton's bourbon for Colonel Blanton for special occasions and events. But he always knew where the sweet barrels were. And of course, if you believe the funny stories that are written on the back labels of Larceny Bourbon about John Fitzgerald knowing exactly where all the sweet barrels were because that's where they usually found him, drunk. But in the old Fitzgerald warehouses. But the other aspect is every stillman and every people that work the warehouses know where those sweet barrels are located, and that's the fun part of learning that as we've been doing this. And ultimately, to go and pick a barrel is a great experience. Get the opportunity to actually go. And it used to be that we were able to crawl around the warehouses, but now that's been even more interesting, is that only a few people let you actually go into the warehouses, where we used to literally go in and watch people shimmy down the ricks and take a drill and take the whiskey right out of the barrel for you that day. There's a little federal law called OSHA that a lot of people are standing by and saying, no, we can't do that anymore. We can't take the consumers up into those type of situations. But still, the fun ones to have great experiences, we'll talk about those in particular. What you're going to need to know, should you want to go after a barrel on your own, you're going to have a retail partner. I don't care what state you're in, where you're from. That's just because of the 21st Amendment. We have a 3-tier liquor law system in this country. So you have to have a retail partner in order if you're going to try and purchase a barrel on your own. All brands are allocated now, and it's gotten worse, as indicated talking about the Four Roses situation. You can't always get what you want. If I had audio, we'd be playing, little Rolling Stones at the moment. So knowing that, you have to talk about, and we'll talk about each individual brand here in a minute, what you can look for. You're going to visit the distillery and make a selection. You have 2 ways to do that. If you go to the distillery and get the opportunity to get an appointment to do a barrel pick, that's the best way to go. But if you're from out of state and you can't always make it back over here, they will send you samples. And I will tell you this, if you get 3 samples from a distillery and you don't like them, tell them you don't like them and ask for 3 more. It's their job to get you what you're looking for. Don't settle for what they send you. And if you run into resistance with that, have your retailer advocate for you in that regard too, because I think that's really important. We do that. There's certain small distilleries that we have to get barrel samples from, and I can tell you a number of times we've sent the samples back, saying, nope, not what we're looking for. So then you have to, look at your delivery lead time. If you're trying to get something for Christmas, you're already too late. In a lot of respects, just for example, for this year. Because the only reason I'm saying you're too late, because most everybody's already cut off their appointments. I just got cut off from Wild Turkey just the other day. There is no new dates going to be offered for the balance of the year. So you have to know those type of situations as well. Samples, if you get the sample sent to you, that's usually the quickest way to get a turnaround on it. So if you're in a shorter time frame, that's actually the faster way to do it, because that way you're not dependent upon an appointment, the availability of appointments at different distilleries. Questions on that? I mean, it's pretty straightforward, but there's just some things that you need to be aware of as you're dealing with that. So quickly we'll go through, because really we're going to talk about the whiskeys and talk about each individual experience. From the legacy distilleries, we call that, those are the big guys that have been around for a long time. At Barton in 1792, that's still one of my favorite little places to go pick a barrel. You actually, not only do you get the consumer tour, you get to go around and look at the facilities, but you actually go into the barrel warehouse H. They have usually between 4 and 6 barrels, depending on the size of your group, to choose from. You get to beat the bungs out of the barrels. You get to put the pipe thief in. You get your hands wet, covered in whiskey, and you get to taste it. It's a great experience. So if you can get an appointment there, that's a really good one. Brown-Forman, Old Forester experience is changing. We will know a little bit more about that, but we're going to be picking a barrel in about 2 weeks after the opening. So we're going to be one of the first barrel selections down at the new facility. So I have a better idea. I'm sure it's going to be fun. Used to be a good one to go to too. Woodford Reserve, you got 2 opportunities at Woodford. You can do a 2-barrel batch, which Chris is doing a class on, as we speak, right around, just 2 doors down. And that's a fun experience. When I first got into this, my bourbon snob in me said, I don't want to do this. I want a single barrel bourbon. But the fun part of it is you get 4 different whiskeys and you put the combinations together. And you would think what would be an additive effect. Oh, I love the smell on this and I love the taste on this. Let's put these 2 together. It'll be a great whiskey. That doesn't always happen. And it really teaches you what the master distiller is going through when they're batching those whiskeys. It's a fun experience and I really highly recommend it. The Double Oaked is another one of my favorite whiskeys that we've done. They sort of changed the program a little bit. We're pushing them back to actually thieving the barrels again. So I'll know more about that. We've got a pick on August 6th, and we're pushing that envelope. But right now, they bring you samples out. They've already pulled the whiskey out of the barrel for you. So it's still a great experience and a lot of fun. But the batch at Woodford, the batch place is the best to go. Blanton's or Buffalo Trace. Everybody in their brother knows that the magic and the gold happens at Buffalo Trace. Well, not all of it, but you would think that based on the allocations of the whiskeys, based on how hard it is to find even the normal stuff on an everyday basis. When they started allocating me on regular Buffalo Trace, I was like, you're kidding me. I mean, I can't buy 3 cases of 175s or 5 cases, we get allocated even by size on Buffalo Trace, and sometimes we're out of product because of that. But when you get to pick a barrel, they're modifying their consumer program right now too. It used to be the first week of December they'd have a release date for consumer barrels, and at 12:01 midnight, I can tell you about 12:05 or 12:10, most of those barrels are sold. People are lining up for that. So they're rethinking their consumer program. Bo has yet to release what the details of that's going to be and when that release date's going to be. But Eagle Rare was pulled off the allocations for 2018, so if you hear all these rumors, Eagle Rare is not going away, they're not going to upscale it. It's just that they didn't have enough enough whiskey in storage to offer single barrel programs. But it will be released back in 2019. But those are the 4 brands you can get. And Weller, you can get either the Special Reserve or Antique 107. You cannot get Weller 12. We keep asking, they haven't done it yet. So don't look for that one or expect that. But that's also a fairly good experience because, again, you get the great tour, you go into their barrel warehouse and get the opportunity to get your hands wet and thieve the barrels right there too. Four Roses is a really, really good experience. If you're lucky, Brent or Al Young will be on the barrel pick, but their team there is really a lot of fun. And when you're picking single barrel, which is the OESK, that is all, you get like 4 barrels to choose from. But if you're picking a barrel strength, which is really the real fun thing, you get to taste all the current mash bills that are available. Right now, this last year, there were only 7 mash bills, available in the marketplace because some of them they had to pull off. All the O's were pulled off for 2018. They just didn't have enough O whiskey to allow you to pick a barrel from that standpoint. But if you get all 10, that's a hoot. That's a great day. You're tasting 10 different glasses of whiskey right there, all different mash bills. And that's really one of my favorite ones to do. And they're a little, you can still pull a little, even though we were cut back, they're still, just helped a restaurateur negotiate getting a barrel just recently, which is really a lot of fun too. So, quick stories on all those. Move on to Heaven Hill. Heaven Hill right now, Elijah Craig is the only thing they're allowing barrel sample or barrel picks on. And again, you get to go back into the warehouse. You get to do the full thieving. 2019, all the other brands are supposed to be returning at some level. We might be able to get Evan Williams late this year, but right now, even Bernheim wheat, which was used to be like, oh, please take a barrel of Bernheim. I've been begging for a barrel. Now I'm begging for a barrel of Bernheim. It used to be they begged us, please take one, please take one. So in Henry McKenna, I'd kill to keep that one, but I think this last year Fred Bennett killed us on that one by naming that, the best whiskey, in the Ultimate Spirits Challenge out in San Francisco this year. It's not drying up or running away yet, but I think it's just going to put a crimp on that barrel returning to the single barrel program. Jim Beam's another really, really good fun experience. If you're going to do a Knob Creek barrel to Jim Beam, that's cool. You go into their warehouse, you go to Warehouse K, all the barrels lined up, you thief, you do all that taste. When you've picked your barrel, they get on the radio, truck backs up to the loading dock, they roll that barrel right on the truck, you go back down the hill, and you dump it. You get to watch that barrel being dumped, watch the gauging tank to say how the fun part is everybody guesses how much the gallons is going to actually hit. And then they take you on a tour, feed you lunch, and then you take you upstairs while the whiskey's being proofed down to 120. And then you get the opportunity to bottle your own whiskey right there. You go through the bottling line. You take the bottles out of the case, you put them on the bottling line, you fill them up. You want to take 1, 2, or 3 with you that day, you dip them in the wax, you seal them, they send them over to the gift shop, and you can take it home with you right then. It's a great experience. It's a lot of fun. Long day, but a lot of fun. Maker's Private Selection is the thinking man's and woman's choice of making bourbon or picking a bourbon. You're familiar with the 46 process, Maker's 46, where they have their barrel staves sink in? Private Selection, they give you 5 combinations. They give you 5 different staves for which to choose from. And you're able to pick what combination you want to do. So that's really a challenge, because depending on how large the group is, I've seen some groups take like 7 or 8 hours to pick a damn barrel. That's a lot of whiskey and it's way too long. But it's still a great experience because you get the opportunity to taste 5 different expressions of Maker's Mark and get to batch the one you like to do. Then you literally go and sink the staves in the barrel, they recooper the barrel for you, you go fill it up, and then you roll it into the warehouse. It's a really cool experience, a lot of fun. Wild Turkey. I say this not only is it alphabetical, but honestly, without a doubt, that's my favorite of all the barrel experiences we do. You go into the oldest warehouse on the property, and you don't like what's going on, particularly if Eddie's there with you doing a barrel pick. He'll say, well, let's bounce another damn barrel out and try something else. But you'll wander around that warehouse and go, oh, there's a bunch of them over here, let's try these. Oh, didn't like these, let's go over to the other side and try these. A lot of fun. But it's just a great experience because you're really right there in the thick of it. You're listening, particularly if you get even with, we've done it now with 3 generations. We've done them with Jimmy and Eddie, Bruce and Joanne now. Eddie's son and niece are now the next generations coming in to help with the barrel selections. And Joanne's a hoot too. She's a lot of fun to pick a barrel with. So if you have the opportunity to do that, that's really, really a good one. The Reserve Rye, we thought we were going to be able to get one in 2018, but it's going to be on the program for next year. And then there's a lot of the smaller distilleries, but I'm not going to go through each one, but primarily, these are great experiences in their own right. We've not picked from all of them personally yet. Copper and King's brandy one that's another really good fun one to go do. New Riff, we're going to be experiencing them. We've picked OKI barrels from up at New Riff before, but we've already got our date picked for picking a barrel with them. That's in October of this year, not next year. So that's a typo. Excuse me. Peerless is another really good experience. That's why we have that to taste today, to go from that standpoint. And Willet just reopened their barrel selection program this year. And Drew doesn't care about the damn, feds at this particular point, OSHA coming at you. He's going down the warehouse. You're on the 5th floor, you're on the 6th floor, wherever. Let's go find a barrel. That's been a lot of fun. But that's our first experience there, so that's really worthwhile to try too. One I'll give you a little bit of plug on that I think is a really great experience because is picking a barrel over at Starlight at Huber's. Most people locally go, Huber's, well, that's sweet wine. That's a sweet wine place. Well, I can tell you the creativity on the still over there is amazing. We've spent several days over there crawling around the still. My daughter and I and all of our family have gone over there and consumed whiskey. But every time I get in there with Ted, I find something amazing. Damn awful ugly packaging. I'm on tape saying that, but I've told Dana before, so I don't feel bad about saying that. But the whiskey is really, really good. He's making some incredibly good whiskey over there, and it's a really good experience if you really want to just get into a really, truly hands-on, tasting a whole bunch of different selections. He's trying barrel experiments. He's trying different malts. He's trying different grain combinations. He's taking them off at different points in the still, and he'll go through all that with you. You're sitting there and having a really, really good experience, from that standpoint. So that's just another fun one that I really heartily recommend. I know everybody's going, I want some whiskey. All right. So next, the big things is, first question is, when you're after you found your retailer and doing all this, what the hell is this going to cost me? We went through sticker shock one time on one of our barrel selections, going, oh my God, this is wonderful, this is wonderful. We didn't do our homework before we walked in. It says, well, what's the cost of this whiskey? And it was going to be about a $23,000 barrel. So we had to rethink that one real quick. No matter how good it tastes, that's an expensive investment on my end. It's when you talk about retail from that standpoint. But anyway, it's expensive barrel, but it was really damn good. So what is the expected yield? Everybody gets an idea already of what their expected bottle yields are going to be. The older the whiskey, obviously, the less expensive, the less the yield's going to be. But that isn't always the case. We were at Four Roses one year and picked a nine-year-old single barrel, but we only got 60 bottles out of the barrel. Turned out it was a leaker. Nobody, you could see on the outside there were some seepage and things along those type of lines, but we didn't know how bad until we picked it. But damn, it was one of the best barrels we've ever picked. We've also picked them, were pretty damn, like a maker's experience. You're getting a full barrel, no matter where you look at it. You're getting 40 or 41 six-pack cases of whiskey. 240 is about the max you're going to get. You're going to get out of anybody's barrel at this particular point. But you'll range from the low end, like I said, at 60 bottles, all the way up to 246. That's pretty much the range you're going to be talking about. And that helps you with your estimating your cost too. Final bottle proof. There's only a handful of places that give you barrel strength whiskey. Everybody wants barrel strength, non-chilled filtered whiskey. Well, it ain't happening everywhere. Everybody's going to cut you to what their commercial proof is. People say, why is that? Candidly, it's very simple. It's the approval of the labels with the BATF, or what I used to call BATF, the TTB now. You have to get your COLA approval, your label approval, and not everybody wants to apply for labels all the time. So there's only Four Roses with the barrel strength, and a few other smaller people will allow you barrel strength whiskey. Otherwise, it is, like Knob Creek single barrel is 120. So like when we taste the Knob Creek comparison today, both of them are 120. Nice thing about Knob Creek is when you pick a barrel there, their range, very rarely do you get 130s in a barrel pickup, Knob Creek. They're in that high 120s, usually maybe 130, 131. I've very rarely gotten one that tasted over 134. We have seen it, but it doesn't really happen that often. So you get pretty close. Or like at Wild Turkey, where they go in at 103, you're getting close to the barrel proof when because they'll run in that 112 to 115 range, and you're cutting them to 110, so you're pretty damn close when you look at it from that standpoint. That's worthwhile. Chill filtering, most everybody still does. Buffalo Trace just took that option off the table. You can get theirs non-chilled filtered now. And again, chill filtering started just for stabilization. It was to take out what was perceived impurities. When a whiskey got too cold, it clouded up, particularly if it's below 86 proof. And that's where the process of chill filtering started, was just to stabilize the fats and the oils, so you didn't have to have an ugly, cloudy whiskey. So most whiskeys, are still going to be chill filtered. Only a few places offer different bottle size options. Okay, Buffalo Trace is the most flexible. You can go from 175 to 375 if they have those sizes available when you're picking a barrel there. For the most part, otherwise it's 750 milliliters at most every place you go. Some private label personalization that will allow you to occur. Again, Four Roses is probably one of the best ones as far as that's concerned. They give you a whole side label. You can put pretty much whatever you want on it. As long as it isn't obscene, they're pretty much into it. Let you play with it. Some of the others will do that as well for you too. But most of them will apply a medallion on the shoulder of the bottle that gives you some level of personalization. And then the time from selection to final delivery. As I indicated on one of the earlier slides, it can be anywhere from 12 weeks to 16 weeks. Of course, we got one barrel last year that got lost in translation. We picked it in September. We didn't get it until, March? Yeah. So it just somewhere got shifted around and nobody quite knew exactly what happened or why, but, we eventually got it. But those are the key things. All right, questions. We want to drink some whiskey here. You're all way too quiet. And you're all way too polite too. If we do a class at the store, people are already, got the whiskey picked up already and, been doing. So you're doing really well. All right. You're being very polite. So, ours versus theirs.
Shopify's already taken the cash register online, helping millions sell billions around the world. But did you know that Shopify can do the same thing at your retail store? Give your point-of-sale system a serious upgrade with Shopify. Shopify's point-of-sale is your command center for your retail store. From accepting payments to managing inventory, Shopify has everything you need to sell in person. And with Shopify, you get a powerhouse selling partner that effortlessly unites your in-person and online sales into one source of truth. Track every sale across your business in one place and know exactly what's in stock. Connect with customers in-line and online. Shopify helps you drive store traffic with plug-and-play tools built for marketing campaigns, from TikTok to Instagram and beyond. And get hardware that fits your business. Take payments by smartphone, transform your tablet into a point-of-sale system, or use Shopify's point-of-sale Go mobile device for a battle-tested solution. Plus, Shopify's award-winning 24/7 help is there to support your success every step of the way. Do retail right with Shopify. Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/bourbon, all lowercase, and go to shopify.com/bourbon to take your retail business to the next level today. Shopify.com/bourbon. If you're anything like me, then you can't get enough about bourbon. And that's why I'm a subscriber to Bourbon Plus magazine. Bourbon Plus is a quarterly publication that tells the stories from the heart of bourbon, the farmers who grow the grain, the distillers who labor over the process, and the people like you and me who raise their glasses to celebrate it all. Subscribe to Bourbon Plus magazine today at bourbonplus.com, that's PLUS.com, and use code PURSUIT at checkout for $5 off your subscription.
So, ours versus theirs. Like I said, we went on early on to say that the key thing about finding these single barrels is a really fun experience. It's to say, all right, can you taste the parentage? Can you tell the difference in the whiskeys just by setting them side by side? So in this particular case, on the top, we're going to save the Peerless to last on the far left. So we're going to come back to that one. We're going to start. I'm going to start with the Russells because it's going from proof. So we're going to start with the Russell's Reserve, which is the third one, top row. And actually, this is the lowest proof of the three whiskeys. That's why I'm starting there. Just give a good nose to it. Nice little bit of fruit profile. I'm getting just a little hint of cherry in there, but, just a really nice, and a little bit of citrus. Those are classics for coming out of Wild Turkey from that standpoint. Now, this first taste, let's just put it in, swish it around a little bit. The reason we're doing this one is just because for me, it's my first taste. I don't know about you all, but it's my first taste of whiskey in the morning. And this is just the opportunity. This is the opportunity to set your palate. Get the alcohol burn out of the way. Say, okay, all right. Give your body the first chance to say, what the hell did you just do to me? Because when you taste something that you're not familiar with for the very first time, it's a visceral reaction. Your body says, oh, I don't understand that, or I don't know what you just did. Okay? So now we're going to taste the Russells this time for itself. Just take a little taste. Notice where this hits you on the palate. Really good middle, right. This one hits you, to me, right in the middle and moves back. At 110 proof, the alcohol is going to pull the flavor profile towards the back of the throat. But it shouldn't, as like, Jimmy always says, the warm Kentucky hug, it shouldn't be astringent. The first taste, to me, was astringent because that's the first taste of alcohol for the day. Now, I don't get that heat. Yes, I taste the alcohol. I get a little heat, but it's not in a harsh way. With me so far? Okay. So if you're a two-fisted drinker, you keep your regular Russells in your left hand. Let's take up the single barrel Russells. Nose that one. Do you smell anything different? Less fruity? Okay, I'll go with you on that one. I get a little bit more caramel notes on this one. The vanilla and caramels and toffees are showing really well in the single barrel, particularly if you go back and forth. Wood spice in the regular Russells in the nose with that little bit of fruit. Softer, more caramel aspect in the single barrel, just in the nose alone. Go ahead and taste. I particularly feel this is a creamier palate. Much fuller, yeah. Round from top to bottom, mid palate, all the way, front to back. Taste the upper palate on this whiskey too. The roof of your mouth starts to get a little bit more, aspect of this. I get a creaminess and a richness here in this particular whiskey. And that's what I look for when we go for a Russell's barrel. I'd like a little bit more there, stronger aromatics, because I really think the best thing about picking a wild turkey barrel is getting that citrus component and getting that little bit of the cherry component. I just didn't get it in this particular one, but the flavor in this particular barrel I thought was amazing. If you go back and taste the regular Russells right after it, and no offense, Mr. Russell, notice how thin this tastes? All right, so we're gonna do the Knob Creek next. So the Knob Creek at the top right, this is at 120 proof, so we've jumped up in proof. This particular one, I don't get, this particular single barrel, I don't get a lot in the nose. I don't know about you all, I think it's pretty tight to me. Of course, these aren't the best nosing glasses, let's face it. I mean, and with a big nose like mine, I have to take my glasses off to put it in there. I get just a little bit of spice, but nothing too dominant in this particular, in the nose. What about the taste? It's a nice entry for me. Comes in that nice little bit of creaminess right in the beginning, pulls back to the back with that nice Knob Creek spice. I've always thought of Knob Creek as what I call my cocktail bourbon. That's that bourbon I like to start my evening with because it's really spicy. Makes a great cocktail if you really want to do that. But just on the rocks to start the evening off because of the higher proof naturally, but also that spicy component. I think this delivers a really nice, elegant spice feel. So then we'll grab the single barrel version. All right, the question is what discriminates Knob Creek from, regular Jim Beam and, because it's the same mash bill. Well, at every distillery we were looking at, they all use the same mash bill with the exception of, with minor exceptions between wheated and rye mash bills. But in the rye mash bills are pretty much the same. At Jim Beam, they make two rye mash bills. There's the old Granddad mash bill and the Jim Beam mash bill. So the Jim Beam mash bill is about 72 corn, 18 rye, 10 malted barley, in rough approximation. They won't tell you the exact numbers, but that's rough approximation. It's location in the warehouse and age, okay? Knob Creek barrels are pretty much, outside to midway, and not as high up in the barrel warehouses. I think fifth floor and down is pretty much where we get the Knob Creeks from. Jim Beam is everywhere, inside, outside, up, up, down, wherever, to get that same consistent flavor. Okay, and also it's only 4 years old. Knob Creek, those of us who've been around long enough to remember, it used to be a 9-year-old age statement, and they took that off about 3 years ago. But it still averages in that 8 to 12 range, depending on where they pull it. So that extra time in the barrel gives you more vanillin, gives you more texture. The lower floors, you start getting a little bit more earthiness and a little bit more green and herbals. And then you start getting really high alcohols at the higher floors. So back to the Knob Creek, I think this has got I think it's got a bolder nose. I get a little bit more toffee even in the nose on this one. And flavor profile, I think while I liked I like the first glass really well because the way it entered. I think this is a little bit bigger. You could taste that parentage because it came in at the same place. It brought that creams and vanillas right at the beginning of the palate, and it's pushing that nice spice in the back. But to me, the first one was very linear. Came in on my tongue, went straight back, went from cream to spice. The single barrel version here, to me, is giving you cream and spice and a whole big mouthfeel. It's not your teenage children competing for attention. Okay, they've hit stride in about mid-20s and life is okay. And we have a house style. I'll talk a little bit about that from that standpoint. At Westport Whiskey One, we have a house style. Every once in a while, I go off the reservation, and we'll get a big, bold, spicy barrel. But I want creams and vanillas and toffees. I want to be seduced, one, by the nose. Two, I want that mouth profile to hit me in that creamy, lush aspect. To steal a line from Brad Boswell, who is president of Independent Stave Company, where most of the barrels come from, did this really great barrel class with him one time, and he my favorite line that I stole from him is, "Vanilla is catnip for adults." I'm in. Okay, if it was chocolate, it'd be even better, but vanilla, I'm in, and that's what I look for in those barrels. It's all there. That vanillin is in those barrels. The reason we toast those barrels is to get the vanilla profile out of that barrel. And therefore, you get that opportunity as it ages to get a little bit more of that. The challenge has always been and we've all tasted an overaged whiskey. I'm assuming at this point in your whiskey career, you've tasted something that had been in the barrel too damn long. Everybody knows it. And you go, all I get is wood tannin. Becomes less vanillin and more green wood tannin. It's like opening a very expensive bottle of Napa, California red wine way too early. It sucks all the moisture out of your mouth. That's what barrel tannin does in a whiskey. It's the first thing you do when you taste that whiskey is you go grab a glass of water, you grab that bottle of water and swig it back because it's sucking all the moisture out of your mouth. That's a whiskey that's out of balance to me. Now, that may be your style. Because I've got a group that I pick barrels with, they want those big, bold, tannic barrels. And that's okay. That's why we have all the different things. But our style is to be that better balance. I want spice, I want wood tannin, but I don't want the tannin to be the overpowering flavor profile. And that's where I think this Knob Creek shows a great example. The Knob Creek single barrel commercially has a little bit of that wood tannin, on the aftertaste. But I think this one has wood tannin, but it supports the overall flavor profile and pushes it up to the upper palate. This one is just a bigger mouthfeel because of that to me. But this would be one of those barrels that would have been just batched in with regular Knob Creek. And I'm glad we rescued it. So we'll do 1792 next. In full disclosure, the 1792 we're tasting is only the small batch because full proof isn't available commercially for them to buy for us to compare, okay? But the barrel select that we have is full proof at 125, okay? So we're looking at the 90, it's a mod number, it's 94.75321, but anyway, so we're looking at the 1792 small batch first. And I think one of the best things about the 1792 is, to me, it's a great fruit nose. I mean, it's just a regular old 1792 is a great value whiskey for the, overall. Has a little bit of sweetness in the nose, has a nice little fruit component in the nose, and then taste. Comes in just that nice, bright, creamy, but then immediately goes back to, oh my gosh, it's hot. To me, it's front and back. I mean, it's still great. I mean, for under $30, it's a hell of a great glass of whiskey. But for me, if I'm analyzing this, candidly, I think I love the front, the sweetness right at the front of the mouth, in the middle of the palate, but then it has that really woody aftertaste. Oh, yes. It's questions, or not a question, but a comment. He said he had some friends that every year that he's gone back and picked barrel picks, he's seen how the maturity of the whiskey has gotten, how better it's gotten better. Yeah, I mean, the program that they're doing there, and Josh, who manages that program, he's really gotten the handle of, finding where the really good barrels come from in that program. And I have a kick. I have a great kick out of going down there and picking barrels with him. So let's try this. Let's nose the single barrel version. This is at full proof at 125. Notice how big the fruit nose is on this one? I get that almost apricot, peach type nose in this. I mean, it's a fruit nose, very big. A little bit of vanilla in there, but it's just a hugely beautiful fruit nose. Nice little bit of spice too. But to me, the difference again is how much rounder this glass of whiskey is. I don't get that little bit of burn, much higher proof, but I get no burn on this particular glass of whiskey. The fruit, the vanilla, the profile, all of that balances the alcohol, in my opinion. 1792, I was just reminded, when you go to 1792, you have 3 different options on picking a barrel down there. You can do a small batch, like the first one. You can pick a single barrel. They call it small batch, but the small batch in this case is 1 barrel. You could pick it as bottled in bond, or you can pick it as full proof. They have 3 options that you can bottle it at. So now this is a really good, linger or finish a little bit of the, whatever bourbon you want, because we're going to switch to rye. So a little water would be helpful. For those of you who are not familiar with Peerless, if you've not taken the opportunity to go down and visit Peerless down at 10th and Main, I heartily encourage you to do so. It's a great tour. It's truly a family-run operation. Everybody there, treats you really well. They've got a great story to tell. I mean, I'm not going to go into all their history and their story, but I do think it's one of the best little tours. It's one of the best hidden gems, particularly here in town. If you're not, yeah, they're 10th and Main Street, downtown. Yeah. So if you have opportunity you have blank time in the afternoon, call and see if they have an appointment or tour time, but it's definitely worth going to. So now we're going to be talking about rye whiskey. Peerless, this is a rye whiskey. This is under 3 years old. We're looking, right now their whiskeys are averaging about 30, 31 months old. They're coming up on 3 years age. People go, okay, particularly when you get the price, you go, why am I paying this much for such a young whiskey? Well, let's take their whiskey on the top left, in this case, first. First of all, on theirs alone, I'm being seduced by the nose. This is probably the biggest nose of almost all the whiskeys that we've had so far. It's a little bit of buttered rye toast. Good game to play sometime if you want to do it is to get a bunch of different rye whiskeys and some rye breads, from a very light rye to a full dark pumpernickel. Slice them up and toast a few of them, and compare the rye flavor profiles with the whiskey. So nose-wise, I think this is a pretty damn great start. Get that nice little bit of green rye spice in the note. Mid-palate, back, because rye whiskey should not be sweet, traditionally. Now, there are a lot of rye whiskeys, legal rye whiskeys, that are barely legal because they're at 51% rye. Definition of rye whiskey is just like bourbon. 51% rye is all the minimum rye you have to have. It doesn't tell you what the other small grains can be. Most commercial rye whiskeys will have, somewhere in that 50s to low 60s rye, large percentage of corn, and then your malted barley. I think the quality of the whiskey is amazing. It's expensive as hell. Somebody asked what the price is. It's about it's $1.10 to $1.25, depending on where you go shopping. And in Kentucky, even at the distillery, yeah. In Kentucky, we have a value-added tax. So if you're from out of town, we have an 11% value-added tax at the wholesale level. So that inflates your bottle cost by about 15%. So you can find this a lot of places around the country are about $100, or sometimes even less. But here it's 125, 110, it's just because our taxes drive it crazy. So look at the single barrel version of this. What I really liked about this one was the caramel in here. This has this, really, really nice caramel profile with that nice spicy finish. And the other thing I like about this is the mouth coating. Again, I'm up at the front, I'm in the middle, I'm in the back, and this one's close to like 120. It was close to 130 in the proof. It's barrel strength. Really nicely, to me, it was a nicely balanced whiskey. Not bourbon, from that standpoint. I think I don't think it's as complex as some of the bourbon we just tasted, but I think it's an amazingly complex rye. So what do you think? Well, the bourbon, I've been tasting the bourbon since it's about a couple months old, and it's very... I haven't done that, but I've been tasting it all along. It's going to be good. But I think this rye is pretty amazing. The question was, when's Peerless's bourbon come out? It'll be next summer. I've been tasting it. If you like the rye, you'll love the bourbon. Yes, I think the Peerless is expensive, but I think it's damn good rye whiskey. I think it's damn good whiskey, period. It happens to be a really damn good rye whiskey. Thank you all for your time. I do appreciate it. Thank you.